Hi everybody, here it is. This video being recorded about 12 hours before the first pitch of the Major League Baseball season in Tokyo, Cubs and Dodgers. And though the logo got faded a little bit, here's a Cubs doll, a wooden soldier I got from my Aunt Jen and Uncle Wes one Christmas. I also have a Troy Tulowitzki bobblehead, some baseballs, and commemorative stamps from one of the best eras, probably the best era of baseball, 40s and 50s. Roy Campanella, Hank Greenberg, Mickey Mantle, Mel Ott, all featured. So as baseball season approaches, I got to thinking yesterday about the pitch clock, well, over the past few days actually, and how it felt like the seeds were being planted many moons ago when I was a student at Dakota Ridge in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I loved baseball. That was my big thing. Most of my peers completely disagreed. They thought baseball was too slow, too anaerobic. I heard many people say it wasn't a real sport. Just people were very hard on baseball back then, late 90s, early 2000s, and when football season began, even when exhibition games were being played, and I would watch a much more meaningful baseball game in August than an NFL exhibition game, I had to answer questions why I would do that. And then going to my senior year, when a person who thought he was a friend of mine but was the polar opposite would chastise my interest in baseball again and again and again, wondered why I read books about it, couldn't wait to change the subject. Baseball just wasn't it among my peers, and I think that in some ways helped eventually lead to the pitch clock. I know it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, but it was just at one school. But then I think about the Yankees and Mets Subway Series my junior year back in 2000. Outside of New York, very few people cared. I think that was to that point, the lowest rated World Series ever on TV. Series the Yankees won, by the way, in 5 games. And then over the years, the attitude, I think, about baseball being too slow continued as World Series TV ratings continued to be low, just kept getting lower from Yankees and Mets unless the Red Sox were breaking a drought or the Cubs breaking a drought. Or the Yankees Phillies, I think, in 09 had okay ratings, but for the most part, the World Series became an afterthought. And I think it was in no small part because of people's belief about baseball being just too slower paced, too boring for them. And then I think about the playoffs as well. As I've talked about many times, like when fewer teams make the playoffs, I like teams earning their way into the playoffs. I personally would much rather earn that. But I had disagreements with a couple of my peers about that too with baseball. One of them, same guy who got on me about being a baseball fan daily, once told me he thought literally everybody should make the playoffs. At another time saying at least 16 teams out of the 30 should be in. And I think that helped lead to, money the big thing, but I think the prevailing attitude, we got to get more teams in, we got to make more people feel good, led to the 12-team playoff there is now as opposed to the 8 when I was in school. And thinking about how attendance last year in baseball was up, and TV ratings actually were up a little bit for the postseason and the World Series. Now, I am not a fan of the pitch clock. I think it's distracting, and I don't care how long the game is, if it's 2 hours or 4 hours. I really don't. That was part of my appeal with baseball. And I'm not gonna say I was wrong, it's just, in this case, my opinion isn't the same as what the majority seem to think. And the same thing with the playoffs. I'd much rather win. 8 teams out of 30 when I was in school I thought was perfect. I was eventually fine with just 10 teams getting in, but now 12 again, I'd rather win, but others don't see it that way. Others would just rather feel good somehow or another and get rewarded regardless. And that's just the way it is. Kind of like with me in baseball, like I just talked about. My opinion just doesn't always go along with what others believe. I learned that about baseball, learned that about my thoughts on music, my thoughts on society, the whole thing in high school. So baseball's had some good vibes last year. Probably some vindication for Commissioner Rob Manfred, often criticized. And I'm not one of his biggest fans, as most of you know. With TV ratings and attendance up, I'm sure he felt good about the pitch clock and the added playoffs and everything going his way. But yet, here's something to consider. Even with extra playoffs, the Dodgers, as we know, continue to get most of the best players. The Mets are big spenders. The Yankees, a handful of teams, still big spenders. While others, like the A's, didn't bother to spend hardly anything till leaving Oakland after last season. Rockies, a few years ago, their goal, let's finish 500. That's what one of their owners said. And others, like Pittsburgh and Miami, not spending. That part's not so good to me. Hey, bar's lowered for you guys to make the playoffs, eh? We're not too concerned with being contenders anyway. And then to go beyond that, collective bargaining agreements set to end after the 2026 season, and given that neither the players nor the owners are particularly friendly to one another, I just don't know that I see a deal getting done without at least some kind of work stoppage. And that one I could be wrong about. Not that stranger things haven't happened. Before, I remember when a strike was averted at the last minute when I was 18 that allowed the 2002 World Series to actually go on as well as the end of that season. But it's just, given the recent history, the troubles getting the 2020 season going in the pandemic, getting the last year of baseball as I grew up with, 2021 going, was no piece of cake. Owners wanted a shorter season, players wanted it to go by the collective bargaining agreement, which is what happened. And then an actual lockout did happen in 2022. It just, lucky for the game, only delayed the start of the season by a week. So just a lot to think about. I am, as you might guess, not overly crazy about what's gone on. My interest is down a little bit. But I know I can't rid myself of baseball completely by any means. I know I'll still watch my share of games and highlights when I'm out doing something else. I'm sure I'll look at my phone, look at scores and whatnot. It's just different to me now, and my personal opinion, not in a good way, but that personal opinion doesn't seem to be the same as many others, so it goes. I may yearn for different days, but I still celebrate opening day, and if you do too, happy opening day, whether you celebrate tomorrow morning or the 27th when season opens for everybody else, most everybody else. Whatever it may be. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Happy baseball season, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. And one last quick thing, these stamps truly represent when baseball was a game long before the big business it is now. Have a good one, everyone.